We're really excited for our last community conversation of the weekend. Before we jump in, can we just hear it for Taylor County, y'all? We are so grateful to be in such a beautiful place to end our weekend here. I, for one, am very excited about jumping in that water. I hope you've had a meaningful experience here. I hope you've met some Taylor Countyans that have taught you something about this place that is resonant and that makes you a little bit prouder to be a Kentuckian. I hope you have learned some things about Taylor County that have surprised you, that have made you reckon with the things that you assumed about this place when you showed up. And then I'll help you tell a more nuanced, diverse, exciting story of this place when you go home. We are really grateful to have these folks here with us today to talk about how they are balancing the stewardship of this really unique and beautiful resource, which is the Green River Lake State Park. They're going to talk to you about recreation. They're going to talk to you about economic development. They're going to talk to you about ecotourism. They're also going to talk to you about stewardship and conservation of this resource. So we're going to have a really complex conversation about, what all it takes to steward our community's assets so that they continue to be enjoyed long into the future. So we're really grateful to have that conversation here today. We have our own Shaelyn Bishop leading the conversation. And with that, I would think before we turn over to Shaelyn, we would love to just welcome Greg Gribbins, who is the Director of Taylor County Tourist Commission, back up here with us.
Thank you very much. I'm also the Executive Director of Chamber of Commerce, and you're welcome for the weather. Chamber of Commerce weather, we ordered it special just for you for this weekend. We pay extra for that, by the way. Again, we appreciate you coming to Taylor County. I told you on Friday night that we truly believe that we live in one of the greatest communities, and not only in Kentucky, but in this part of the country. I hope you found that why we think that over the last couple of days, because in the tourism, our line, our brand in tourism is we are everything you love about Kentucky all in one place. And we hope that you've experienced that over the last couple of days. So again, welcome, and we hope that you've seen things that would interest you to come back and visit us in the coming weeks and days. I have to put in the plug, we have the largest 4th of July celebration in Kentucky. It starts June 29th. It is a 6-day festival that goes through July 4th. It includes hot air balloons, aerial shows. We have the Masterworks program, concerts. Some of the best, the most talented artists in the world are in Taylor County over a 4-week period. And we are blessed to have performances from some of those artists during our 4th of July celebration. Of course, we have a huge parade that lasts about 2 hours. On the 4th of July, we have a lot of entertainment and, of course, fireworks. So look for us at Campbellsville4thofjuly.com or at our website, Campbellsvilleky.com, to get more information about that. Jets over Kentucky is one of the grandest, it is the grandest Jets airplane display in the world. These remote control pilots come in from all over the world, in Europe and across America, and they are here for 6 days with aerial displays of some really, really nice aircraft. And we host that as well the 2nd week of July. So there are a lot of things going on in Taylor County, as you've seen from all of our attractions. The thing we get to do is we get to promote all of this. So our job is easy, as you can see, when we can stand in places like this and say, come to Taylor County. All we have to do is just take a picture or show the scenery. So our job, we've got a fantastic job in that we get to promote all of this. But if you ever have any questions, contact us at the Chamber office and the Tourism office. We'll be glad to help you. If you have group trips that want to come in, we'll help you get those organized as well. Anything that you need from our office, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you.
we know that it serves so many surrounding communities as well. We're here at Green River Lake. This is a man-made lake established in 1969 by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and it's fed by the Green River. Kentucky is a landlocked state, but Kentuckians are surrounded by waterways. Kentucky has over 49,000 miles of river. That's just river. I didn't look up the stats on all our lakes and streams and creeks. So I know that each of you on the panel are deeply connected to Kentucky waterways in your work, probably also in your hearts and souls, as am I. I grew up on the Green River. I came here to Green River Lake to swim in the summers. So you all are going to hear today from some people who are invested in the ecology of this area, the natural resources, and the ways that we as a public engage with these spaces. So we have Josh Bratcher, who works for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers as a natural resources specialist, park ranger. We have Brian Gray in the blue, retired from Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources as a wildlife biologist, but still working on projects for fish and wildlife. We have Dr. Richie Kessler with us again, professor at Campbellsville University in the Environmental Science Program and runs the nonprofit Forever Green. And we have Julie Dennis, Assistant Executive Director of Taylor County Tourism. So I want to start with Josh. Josh patrols the project lands and waters, ensuring public safety and protection of the natural resources. And of the many responsibilities that he has, a lot of them involve interacting with the public in these beautiful natural spaces. So I know that in your education in environmental science, especially with Dr. Kessler as a mentor, you would have heard the sentiment that when people care about something, they're more likely to want to protect it. In your interactions with the thousands of visitors that come to Green River Lake each year, what observations do you hear from them about what is unique in this lake project?
So, as she said, being a park ranger, I do have the opportunity to interface with the public, come out and talk to you guys pretty often. Of those many duties, I became the interpretive services coordinator, so I really get to talk a lot with kids. So, as she had mentioned, with Richie Kessler being over here sitting next to me, he's kind of cool. Yes, if you grow up around these resources and you get to really like these resources, you become connected with them and you want to maintain them and protect them. And being a park ranger, that's just exactly what we get to do. So, with the chances I have to come and speak with visitors around the lake in various formats, I often hear visitors talk about the remote feeling that they have when they come out and visit Green River Lake. While out on the lake, you'll notice, you guys look around, well, this is just a small piece of the lake. Most of the shoreline, you don't see private boat docks, you don't see big lake houses or cabins or anything up on top of the hill, or people mowing golf cart paths all the way down next to the lake. Green River Lake does not have that shoreline management program that some other neighboring lakes have, which in short means that you don't see those types of things on our shoreline. It's natural shoreline has to be left alone or managed by us and Fish and Wildlife if we see erosion problems and so forth and so on. This kind of gives you the impression really being out in nature, which is something that's difficult to find locally. Being an avid outdoorsman, I do spend a lot of time out here on the lake in my personal time outside of my job. There's a lot of days you come out to the lake in the middle of the week, and there aren't all this many visitors out here. You know, you have an opportunity to come out and sit in an area of scenic beauty. You see eagles, deer, tons of small game, large game, all the different species of birds and fishes, and everything you can find here is quite amazing, really. Folks often brag on the vast amount of public hunting area we have here too. This project's over 30,000 acres in size with over 20,000 acres of mostly forested land that maybe from this point of the year on through the summer is rarely stepped foot on by most of the public. So you truly are in an area out in nature. Visitors often seem impressed by the endless fishing opportunities that we have here at Green River Lake. Being one of those outdoorsmen, I love that. We've got great populations of all different species of fishes here, and we even have the muskie, which is unique to Green River Lake, as most lakes in the state do not contain muskie, and Green River being one of the best places to go out and catch a muskie in the state. Green River Lake also has like over 50 miles of hiking trails, and some of which are multi-use, so people do get the opportunity to come out and ride their mountain bikes here. Those that like to go on horseback riding trips have lots of areas they can get out and do that as well. Some of those visitors like to come out and spend a few days out here, and we have multiple campgrounds with hundreds of campsites, both primitive and upgraded facilities for campers. We, in partnership with Kentucky State Parks, we have hundreds of campsites and different opportunities and great facilities like what we're sitting in right now for most of the visitors to come out and enjoy. We have people come from hundreds of miles to come out here and just see areas like this, because some of you may be from areas where you don't have these places close by. I grew up in a great portion of the state where Green River is in my backyard and Green River Lake is where I work, so pretty awesome. If our visitors really looking for a wonderful outdoor recreation site, Green River should definitely be at the top of their list.
Can you remind us one more time how many acres are in the park project?
So Green River Lake total size is 32,177 acres. 8,210 acres are Green River Lake in the water. I do have the fact of Green River being 370 miles long of that 49,000 that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah. And some of the lands in the park project are also managed wildlife area, which leads us into Brian Gray, who I'll ask a question of next. Brian and I met quite recently, actually, but we quickly bonded over our shared love of the threatened eastern hellbender, which is North America's giant salamander. Brian devoted his career as a wildlife biologist for Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources for 30 years, where he oversaw the Green River Wildlife Management Area, which is not too far from here. But retirement did not suit Brian, and he is now working as a non-game seasonal tech for Fish and Wildlife, surveying the eastern hellbender population and bat populations. So he was surveying habitat before and is surveying species now, and has a very broad scope of conservation experience. So Brian, something I learned from you recently is that the Department of Fish and Wildlife is actually in the tourism cabinet. And you mentioned that in Fish and Wildlife, you're managing the people that use the resources. So could you share with us a little bit more about that element of managing people, and also talk a little bit about the economic impact of those activities?
Like you said, I manage the 20,500 acre Green River Wildlife Management Area, which it's right there across the lake and on both sides of the state park and natural areas for the Corps of Engineers. But so out of the 32,000 acres, over 20,000 is Green River Wildlife Management Area. So going to Shaelyn's question about managing people, most biologists get into this job because they love wildlife. Well, managing wildlife is the easy part. Managing people is actually it's my job. I didn't have any problem with people. Most people I'd see during a given point in time, we had a deer quota hunt where about 300 deer hunters would come out over a weekend, and they were glad to have the opportunity, so they were a good cohort to work with. But just like anybody, they're gonna give you their opinions. You don't have enough deer, you don't have enough big deer, or whatever, you know. But overall, they were easy to work with. They'd have to come in, check in. We'd have to see all 300 when they came in, and see all 300 when they left. To step it up a little bit though, Fish and Wildlife, as an agency, is managed by a 9-board commission. And those are semi-appointed, semi-elected process, and their job is to really balance the science of wildlife management with the wants of our constituents, which is mainly hunters and fishermen, but also wildlife users. So sometimes that's an issue, you know, a hunter gets a commission member's ear and he wants bullfrog season to start 2 weeks earlier. And then, so that gets proposed, and then they'll ask the biologist, and then they have a back and forth about why bullfrog season's been like it's been for 30 years and why we can't or can move it earlier. Sometimes it's a biological issue, you can't move it earlier because you're in breeding season or something. Other times it doesn't really matter, it is a human dimension issue, so yeah, they can do what the people want and not really worry about the biology as much. So managing the people is more aggravating than managing the wildlife. Managing the wildlife might be a little bit more difficult depending on the species. Managing deer is not a problem. Managing quail or cerulean warbler is a little bit more of an issue. The eastern hellbender that Shaelyn mentioned about, that's a tough one to manage. It's basically a water quality issue that we know the populations are declining. It's a water quality sedimentation issue, and other than that, we don't know much about them. They are very cryptic. They live under rocks that you can't lift up to catch them. Hardly. You can, but it takes 4 or 5 people to try to catch a hellbender. I did catch 3 a couple weeks ago in a trap, and then Shaelyn started going out with me, and she's just bad luck. We didn't catch one. I haven't caught one since. But we're going to. So that's on her bucket list species, so I'm gonna help her get that. But so we'll get there. That project there is partly funded, at least the equipment through Kentucky Wild. So I shamelessly wore my Kentucky Wild shirt, which, you know, everybody knows what a hunting license is, fishing license is. Kentucky Wild is a volunteer program where you can support non-game by joining a membership, and it can be $2,500. If you got $50,000, they'd take that. So that's kind of managing the people. On the ecotourism side of it, like I say, Shaelyn said, Fish and Wildlife is in the tourism cabinet. I think when that started back years and years ago, it's because, again, we're managing the people, not the resources as much, you know, as when it first started. Now we're probably trying to manage the resources more than the people, but back in the 30s and 40s, it was managing the people, making sure that they were not over-harvesting game, overfishing a fisheries population, whatever. Anyway, a few statistics, and Shaelyn has this, so I'm going to get this to her electronically, so if anybody needs this specifically, you can ask Shaelyn, she can email you a copy later. But we had 4.3 million people spent $11.2 billion on fishing, hunting, and wildlife watching. And this is from a 2022 survey by the National Survey of Fishing, Hunting, and Wildlife Associated Recreation. And about 2 million visitors in the state engaged in these activities. Just for comparison, the economic impact in Kentucky, bourbon is estimated at $9 billion, the horse industry at $6.5 billion. So with Fish and Wildlife at $11.2 billion, we surpassed those two, and that doesn't include all the multiplier effects. 660,000 of Kentucky residents fished, 316,000 hunted, and 2.5 million actively engaged in wildlife observation, whether that's in your backyard or coming out to Green River Lake, looking at bald eagles. Mentioning bald eagles, there's a nest. I shouldn't point out where it is. You're within 3/4 of a mile of probably 2 eagle chicks and a parrot. We have, I think, 7 or 8 nests on what I consider lake property. A couple of them are 20 feet off. I count them anyway. So just a few more stats. On fishing, 968,000 people took 7.5 million trips, which is 13 million angler days. For hunting, 435,000 people took 3.7 million trips for 4.9 million hunter days, and average spending $5,200 per hunter. And then really the big one, and this is where Kentucky Wild comes in, is wildlife watching. There's 4.3 million people engaged on individual trips. You know, it may be only 2 million people that are watching wildlife, but they made 4.3 million trips. I had 204 million watcher days, and they spent $6.4 billion, but they only spent $1,500 each. But when you got that many people doing it, it makes a difference. So. That's kind of summary.
I think the numbers show that people love nature, love spending their time in nature and spending money on it, which can be a good thing.
And what this one didn't show was boating recreation, which the Department of Fish and Wildlife also manages the recreational boaters, the skiers and the jet skiers and all that stuff. So there's more money attributed to that, but it's not accounted in this. This is mainly the hunting, fishing, wildlife watching.
I think it's safe to say that has gone up over time. It's always growing, increasing, right?
I asked Shaelyn the other day, how many kayaks did you see on top of vehicles 15 years ago? And every other one has a kayak on it now. It seems like it's sometimes.
So Richie might have some insight on the balance that we have to find with the increase in recreational use and also preserving our spaces. When I first met Richie many years ago as an undergraduate,
Don't tell them how many.
I won't, don't worry. I was an undergraduate student interested in conservation, and at that time he was working for the Nature Conservancy. He worked with them for many years, then came back to Campbellsville University to teach, where he now leads the environmental science program, and where I also find myself very lucky to be his colleague and friend. Funny how things work out. He also runs the nonprofit organization Forever Green, which you all are able to learn more about on Friday night. And we're excited to have him with us again today to share how all of those different roles have helped to develop his perspectives on environmental stewardship related specifically to the Green River watershed. So, Richie, you've been exploring and conserving the Green River for decades. What changes and impact have you seen over that time, and how are these impacts affecting the ecology?
First of all, let me say what an honor it is to have these two sitting next to me. This tells me maybe I've done something right or had a positive influence on somebody along the way, and I hope we all look for those opportunities to invest in others that we might come in contact with in our professions. And so let me first say that. Secondly, the word balance in Shaelyn's comments there is just such an important key. And I kind of want to use that a little bit and how important balance is when we talk about the role of tourism, ecotourism, balanced against the management of our ecological resources. Because remember, we are recreating within natural ecosystems, and Fish and Wildlife and the Corps and others that are trying to manage the public, which is all of us, no matter what our backgrounds are. So they're managing for millions of attitudes and opinions and backgrounds. Know what a challenge it is to try to pull that off. And it is one of those things I mentioned Friday night. It's what conservation is all about, is having endurance. And you may see wins, you may see improvements in species, for instance, or in habitat quality that you've worked on for years, but then you may return to other places and see that we've gone in the opposite direction. So you have to stay at it, that you never reach that finish line. But as Brian said, and I agree with everything these two guys have already said as well, you know, it is a combination of managing nature and the public where there is public use. So I'm gonna make it a little personal, I hope that's okay, and build on some comments Friday night. I talked to you a little bit while we had myself and Mr. Haskins and others up there about land and why land is so important to us. We're from this area. Josh and I both grew up on the Green River. I also grew up on Russell Creek in Greene County. And I mentioned to you that what makes my farm so special to me personally is that our family lost our farm for over 20 years. And I have a picture of myself as a 4-year-old laying on a quilt with my dad, who would have been 25 years old at the time, on the banks of Russell Creek on that farm. And not long after that, the farm was gone out of the family, as I mentioned to you on Friday night. As a result, when I became a teenager, I, like Brian and a lot of you, I was mostly a fisherman. I also still certainly consider myself a wildlife watcher, but we needed a place to go. And one thing that people are challenged with is not everybody is blessed to actually own a piece of nature. If you're from an urban environment, you understand that. Yet you have to depend on a city park or a county park or the ability to have transportation and pay for travel to go to a place like Green River Lake. We were in Greensburg, Kentucky, metropolis. We only had one red light at the time. We only had one restaurant, well, with two in town. We had the corner cafe, the Cozy Cafe, sorry. And later we got the Blizzard, a Dairy Queen. I think we got a Dairy Queen later. So when I was 13, 14 years old, playing Little League baseball or whatever, my friends and I, when it was summertime, we wanted to be on the river or on the creek fishing and camping. So my dad, who was a mechanic, which is, by the way, an extremely hard, physically challenging career, who managed multiple employees because he was the small business owner, Friday afternoon, I'd say, Dad, we want to go fishing or camping. Well, we no longer had our family farm, but we had neighbors that knew my grandfather and were friends of the family and were gracious enough. They didn't let just anybody come and recreate there. And so Dad would say, you guys hop in the truck, get your gear together, we're going. So off we would go. Some of these farms were close to our home farm. Dad would pull up in the truck, find a little area that looked like a halfway level spot with maybe not too many roots and rocks, and he'd bring out not a weed eater but a manual sieve, and we'd clean off our campsite. Put the boat, by the way, was not a kayak. Here's a change. Like Brian said, the boat would have always either been a wooden flat bottom river boat. Josh here, he probably built one of his own. This guy was talented over here. Or it might have been a metal John boat, like a 12-footer or something. That's the boat you would have. Those are heavy, hard, both of those. It was work recreating back then. This is easy now. So Dad would get us set up. By that time, it'd be about dinner time Friday. All right, see y'all Sunday night. Okay, yeah, that's right. 3 or 4 13, 14-year-old guys out in the middle of nowhere in Greene County with no adults around. And I'm still here to talk about it. And boy, what excitement. I can't even start to tell you any of those kinds of stories. Now, there are some kids around here that still have the luck, the fortune of having a family or a dad or a mom or whatever that still sees that they have those experiences. But I mentioned on Friday night, I felt that was something that was changing as well, that our local youth maybe aren't developing the connection that someone like Josh has been able to develop to our local environment. Now, fast forward to Sunday night. I hear the rumble of this truck. And by the way, I knew my dad's truck. It was just a Chevy pickup truck. But if he's within a mile of me and I hear that particular engine, I know that's Dad, because a lot of times I'd hear him coming home from work in the middle of the week and I had done something wrong and not taken out the garbage or whatever, and I knew I was going to get it. But on that Sunday night, he would come and start helping us pack up camp. One of the first things he would remember, we weren't on our property. We were fortunate enough to have friends that allowed us to come. And he would say this, whatever you do, leave this place better than we found it. Wow. What a simple but deep statement at the same time. Dad didn't just want us to pick up, and this idea of leave no trace, that's what we were trying to do before we knew that's what it was called. But he also wanted us to make sure we left it better than we found it. Of course, part of that is that if we did that, there's a good chance these nice folks might invite us back. Wouldn't that be wonderful? But also because it was our responsibility as users. Recreators are users, don't forget that, of nature. Like Greg said, okay, the promotion is the easy part. You guys got great jobs. That is the easy part. The management is the tough part, because you have to ask yourself questions about, do we run the risk of getting to a point where there's too much tourism? Can there be too much pressure on an ecosystem? The kayaks are a great example. I have multiple kayaks. We own kayaks at the university for our field outings. A lot of times now we would use those. And that's a huge difference. Like I said about those boats we used to have, you don't see as many of those anymore on the back of a pickup truck. You see more kayaks. And on the one hand, I think back to all the time I spent with the Nature Conservancy, because I buy into this idea of if someone is associated with or has a connection to a place, they're much more likely to care about that place. But let me mention something we left out there, and that's education. Just because you think a place is pretty doesn't mean you understand it or understand how your actions, what consequences they might have on that place. So I think if we promote without educating, we run the risk of killing the goose that laid the golden egg. Okay? And by that, what I mean is, I'd like to see our region embrace this idea of making the same statement to all of you and other visitors that come to visit the Green River Basin that my dad would share with me on Sunday night when he came to pick us up on Russell Creek on the banks there, and say, welcome, please spend money at our restaurants, don't bring all your stuff with you and then go back home and shop at Walmart. Right? Visit our specialty stores, our small businesses, and leave a little bit of that bankroll back here. And then let's reinvest it into making sure we are promoting and managing our system here for ecotourism responsibly, so that they get that message. We want your business, but we also want you to help us leave this place better than you found it. Right? For the next people that come along or whatever. Now, we had, I told you, we had young teens from urban Atlanta. I hosted those young people on the Green River. We had people from that area all the way up to some of the largest corporate owners in Kentucky who would come down and experience the Green River in hopes that they would support our conservation efforts, of course. We would oftentimes have 30 or 40 boats in a trip. And we would stop and do surveys. We even got a hellbender one time, believe it or not. And that was 35 years ago, and Brian's still looking for it. I hope we find it again. And, part of that was our education, but something got clicking in my mind, and I thought, am I promoting the Green River too much, calling it the crown jewel of Kentucky's rivers? And having all these KET, hopefully you've seen some of those documentaries on the Green River, and this idea of build it and they will come. Yeah, that's true. And you go on the Green, which again, this is the Green, but this is Green River Lake. The river itself is entrenched now, here in the channel of the lake. But go down to Greensburg I challenge you, if you want to see this lived out. If the weather's like this, again, it's a chamber dream day. I get that. Go down to Greensburg, Kentucky, or even here in Campbellsville out at Roachville. on Father's Day weekend. I took a family who had never floated the Green River from Taylor County to the paddle trail. That's the, we have these blue trails now. And they wanted to take their dad. Well, their own family had about 15 people, kids and grandkids and everything else. And I told them where they would be going, and they were worried about getting lost. Well, I put them out on the river. Well, it was a continuous line from put in to take out. So they weren't going to get lost. No problem there. And it's not that way all the time. So my point is, how do we make that a good thing? And by good thing, I mean sustainable. And Friday night, the word I used a whole bunch, probably too much, was compatible. Compatible. I personally believe we can do it. But it takes effort and intentionality to make that happen. We can't just open the gates, and say we want 5,000 people down here at one given point in time and expect that place to sustain that as far as perhaps the litter or damage to the riverbanks. I've seen those kinds of things as well. So unfortunately, when you come to a place, and the river and the lake should be no different. Like look up here on this, on the top of the roof here, on that joist over there where it says, if you would like to rent this shelter. I don't know, but I'm saying that those look like state rules and regulations up there. I'm assuming that's what they are. You're expected to adhere to some form of civility. Y'all have been talking about that this weekend too. And let me say, when it comes to rules and regulations, the Department of Fish and Wildlife and their sister units in all of our other states, one of the best examples of a conservation success story in the world, not just the country, but in the world, is our system of hunting and fishing laws and regulations that have helped to conserve all of these sport fishing and sport hunting populations that support all that ecotourism. I mean, that's been a huge, huge success story. But again, it didn't just happen. You had to have the work, the research. You had to know what was necessary, and you had to put into play, unfortunately, some regulation. Nobody likes to be regulated. We'd rather people just leave us alone, and I would too. But sometimes things are special enough, places are special enough. We need those regulations. So I kind of went circuitous there. I hope I came back to a particular point that it's all about responsibility. Promotion is the easy part, and that's the fun part, and I've done my part of that as well, but when it comes all the way back around, it's got to happen with education and some common sense, and we can continue to have one of our nation's most productive and biodiverse river systems long beyond our lifetimes and still have where people can come and enjoy that. That should be the goal.
You brought up the point of, is there a point where it's too much, and balancing education and promotion is very important. But there is a very important role that ecotourism plays in promoting our beautiful natural spaces, and I think that's because we are nature. People are nature, and we deserve to experience it as well. We deserve to be able to come to these beautiful spaces and exist in them. And when there are areas like Taylor County that have these beautiful spaces that can heal and serve people, we need, ecotourism to play the role in sharing that natural resource with nature, with people. And Julie plays a role in that. So Julie, you are the Assistant Executive Director of Taylor County Tourism. I learned that Julie owned and operated a small motel in Campbellsville for many years, and I thought, is there anyone other than that you would trust more to ask, so what is there to do around here? Where are the best places to eat? What are the best swimming holes? What are the best hiking trails? And in my email correspondence with Julie, she told me when she was thinking about this panel that she could talk about ecotourism in this area for hours. So I think that we found a really excellent and very qualified person to speak for us today. So you are an ambassador who invites the world to visit our beautiful community. You work on attracting all kinds of tourism, including recreational tourism here at Green River Lake State Park and ecotourism along the Green River watershed. And your efforts have a big economic impact for local businesses, like Richie mentioned, and help people come to visit and care about the communities along the Green River and the river itself. And that is a big role, and tourism has that big role to play in promoting interactions with our environment in a way that contributes to its preservation. So could you tell us, how do you see ecotourism growing in Taylor County and the surrounding regions?
Seeing it grow, well, I do want to start by saying that I do have one of the best jobs in the world. I get to take the most positive things our community has and share them with everybody else, so I'm very fortunate in that. And the way I see things growing here in Taylor County, Campbellsville, especially with Green River Lake, it kind of depends on, it's having open communications with the Corps, with the university, with the state park, and what they need and what they don't need. Just as the other panelists have said, there's a responsibility of promoting something but not over promoting it. And the last few years, Green River Lake gets 1.2 million visitors a year. And that is about the extent that this lake can hold. So we've had to take our own tourism marketing and kind of try to get these people off the lake into our city. And of course we want them to visit our restaurants, visit our shopping, see other things to do, but we've been trying to find a good balance of keeping Green River Lake going, people knowing about it, our trails, home place, our historic sites, but not overrun them with so many people that we destroy the things that we love the most. We also help promote them with their events and keep them going, just like with our historic sites or home place on Green River. A lot of the assets that we have here, it takes all their funding just to keep them up and going, and when it comes to promotion, they don't have the resources like the tourism office does. So we try to step in and get them out there, get their events out there, so they can keep their money locally and spend it how they need to, and we take on that job with promotion. As Dr. Kessler said, we are a huge economic impact in the community. Taylor County Tourist alone, we brought in $42 million in 2022. That is not our budget. Greg would love for that to be our budget. But that's how much people come here and they shop, they eat in our restaurants, they buy gasoline, stuff like that. And even talking about preserving nature and stuff, even our city government has gotten on board. They invited a company down here called Plug Spot. We now have vehicle electrical chargers here, and I thought that was so important. You know, you're inviting environmentalists to come here, and they can't even leave our county once they get here. So I was very happy we got that. And another, with Green River, we've partnered up with an ARPA grant to promote Green River, and I'm so excited about that. Usually we're just concentrated within our county border, but we get to extend this project out to other counties and make it enjoyable for about a 200-mile trail of Green River. And of course with that's going to come education. A lot of the launch pads are on, some of them are on public property, some of them are on private property, and we don't want people making their own launch, you know, crossing on private property and or disturbing people's private property. So a lot of that education comes along with that as well. Let's see if Greg said.
Yeah, I echo all of that, and for those of you who don't realize tourism, it kind of feeds itself. We generate our funds to promote our area by the number of beds that people occupy in our hotels and the campsites. That's our only means of revenue. So if we do a good job of attracting people to come and camp in our campsites and stay in our hotels, that gives us more revenue to promote our area. So again, we are dependent on that cycle of people coming to our area in order to fund our office and give us the ability to promote. In addition to promoting our area, it gives us a chance to invest in infrastructure, better signage, which is very important. Again, part of that education of directing people to the proper places. And that's a new project that we're about to embark on. So there are a lot of things that we do in the tourism office that's not just promoting our area, but it's also investing in our infrastructure, investing in those launch sites and making sure that we have good access and proper access. And part of our role is part of the education part as well. So, when we say tourism, it's more than just drawing people here. It's also about educating them about our community, giving them a reason to talk well about our community. Word of mouth still is great advertising. And what we hope we've planted the seed with you this weekend, that you're going to go out and you're going to talk about Taylor County. And, if you haven't been there, you need to go. Those are the best types of advertising that we can ask for. We don't spend money on that. Those, have ambassadors. We create our own ambassadors by having groups like you here, and we really appreciate it. But what you take with you out into the state returns to us, and we have, that's great for us, but we have to do it right. And it's to have experts like this in our community. And we are blessed in that we have the state and the Corps that does such a wonderful job of maintaining what we have here. I think we can say that, we talked about it just in our group earlier. There are some things about state lakes that you don't have, that we have they don't, like the homes. That's an addition. One of the other things we think is an advantage, even though it is remote here, is that you have quick access to our town. In many state lakes, you're 30 to 45 minutes away from the area, the city, to get access to. I hope you enjoyed the downtown area last night, but to have access to things like that when you want more than just the lake. So it's such a great combination of things that we have that others don't have. And the one thing that we have that no one has is location. We are the geographic center of Kentucky. And when people say Central Kentucky, it really irritates me when Lexington says it's in Central Kentucky. Well, you're nowhere near Central Kentucky. We are the geographic center of the state, and we like to say we're 90 miles from everywhere. We're 90 miles from Louisville, Lexington, Somerset, Bowling Green. So we are a reasonable driving distance to everything you love about Kentucky. All starts right here, in addition to what we have here in this county. So, we have so much to promote, and we are, we like working with our partners, but we're dependent on our partners that we have in our community in order to make it all work.
One thing I wanted to say too, if your community has a tourism office, or if you don't, find your neighboring one. Huge resource of information. I can access the Department of Tourism's website, our website. I have so many resources available to me, and it is free for you all. So make sure you get to know your tourism office, because there is so much they can do for you, and more than likely they're going to be willing to do it with you, even if you're just a neighboring community. But please get to know them. It's a great resource.
Thank you all. Would each of you mind to let the cohort know if you have organizations that you want to ask us to follow and support for you? Maybe somebody should put that in our Slack channel and give you guys some support.
Mine that you've heard a little bit about is Forever Green River. And I noticed there was a lot of Forever Green stuff out there when I registered that nonprofit, but it's Forever Green River Inc. And it's more of an awareness and education, outreach, social media presence. We've got a nice website with lots of information about the Green River ecosystem and the history of the area, and a fairly active Facebook presence. And we are somewhere between 1.9 thousand and 2,000 followers. And Shay promised me that after this weekend, I would hit 2,000 followers.
Okay.
So challenge issued, challenge accepted. I hope so. We've done some cool things with a little bit of funding as well that I'll mention as far as community work. We funded some of the fishing line recycling tubes at the public access points down in Greensburg. I think they might be catching on after about 2 years because they were just used as a garbage can, even though there's everywhere thing on it says no garbage please, and you'd have to go through all that to get a little spool of fishing line. So I think maybe those are catching on. We've also started funding through our partners with the Friends of Mammoth Cave field trips for school systems that don't have a grant or a fund to support their environmental ed visit to Mammoth Cave. So I'm obviously trying to limit that to the Green River Basin since we're forever green. So last year we sent Russell County High School to Mammoth Cave National Park and offset whatever needs they have financially. And this year, as a memorial gift to, I think might have been Shay's middle school principal, I don't remember for sure, but Mr. Mike Mills, who passed away recently, a huge Green River supporter, grew up on the river as well. We received all these memorial gifts for him. And we said, what better thing to do with that than to make that money available to Greene County Middle School, his former school, who's never taken advantage of the environmental education staff at Mammoth Cave. So we're funding the entire 8th grade to go to Mammoth Cave National Park next fall in October.
Organizations to support.
I mentioned the Kentucky Wild briefly. Again, you can enroll in that voluntary program to promote non-game, and through those dollars, we've been using that for me to try to help trap hellbenders. I put out thermal cameras in caves to count the number of Virginia bigger bats, which is endangered species. We do bird mist netting, which is songbirds, and you put little bands on them, and so you can track movements with all the people across the nation who do that. Put up motor stations, they can put little radio collars on birds, and if a bird flies by one of these towers, which is a motor station, it gets a signal, and you can track the movement of birds. They're currently doing banding or tagging wood thrushes up in Moorhead, just for that purpose. We do loggerhead strikes. And monarch butterfly monitoring, we do that. We tag those every year. So, and then they all fly down to Mexico, and so far I think we've had one tag return. But out of millions of monarchs, I guess that's pretty good. You know, we only tag a few hundred a year. And as a side note, if you're a member of Kentucky Wild, you have opportunities to get involved in some of this stuff. You basically, we send out an email and you say, hey, I'd like to tag monarchs, and they select 20 participants or whatever, and you can bring your guest and we'll get you involved in that activity, you know, so it is limited. So that's non-game specific. If you just want to promote the Department of Fish and Wildlife for conservation, to manage Green River Lake Wildlife Management Area, or some other programs, the elk program or whatever, you can just go buy a hunting or fishing license. Whether you hunt or fish or not, you're still supporting that. And then I would encourage you to take advantage of the hunting and fishing experiences. Most people that's never done it and get into it enjoy it. While I got the mic, I'm going to address one other thing that you guys mentioned about balancing people and conservation. That we may not know here in Kentucky, because I don't know of any places in Kentucky that's really had to do this. But like Bratcher National Park a couple of years ago, to visit that during the summer months, peak months, which they only have about a 3-month window out there, like going to the Sun Road, it is on a lottery system. So you have to put your name in a hat just to go to the top of going to the Sun Road. Yellowstone has had some peak times where they've had to limit number of vehicles in the park. Some of the canyon lands down in Utah have had that. We've never had that, but it may be coming, so it's something to keep in mind when you're promoting ecotourism.
The one thing I would encourage you also is get connected with the Kentucky Tourism Department. Check out their website. We have one of the most aggressive and best tourism departments in the country. And we've been recognized for that. And so the things that they're doing outside of Kentucky to bring people here, they have some excellent programs, but they also have a wonderful website. Follow them on Facebook and see the resources and all the many attractions that we have here in Kentucky. We all know that, you know, we know about Kentucky, But like you're finding out here, there are a lot of wonderful places in Kentucky that we need to promote, and the Kentucky Tourism Department is a great resource for promotion and to get to learn about the spots in Kentucky that you just may not be aware of.
And for me, representing the Army Corps of Engineers, we do have a Facebook page, as most every Corps of Engineers lake project in the state's gonna have a Facebook page. I do think it'd be a good idea for everybody to follow along with those pages, because we do have a bunch of volunteer opportunities out there. Like I mentioned earlier, I am the interpretive service coordinator, so sometimes I may reach out on there for volunteers to help out with some kid programs. I know a lot of those can be a lot of fun for anybody. And I also think it'd be a good idea for somebody to follow along with our friends of Green River Lake. There's not too many folks on that friends group nowadays, and they could use all the help they can get. And when I speak about these interpretive programs and events that I might hold, our friends at Green River Lake is a giant support for those. They help us out with the funding to get kids out here to the lake to go fishing, or all the materials I use in campground programs, they help support that stuff too, so they need help too.
We want to thank all of the panelists again so much for bringing And I don't know if we have time now for questions.
We do, can I have a question for y'all. Actually, kind of for all of you, it's relevant to all of you. Have any of you heard of the Minnesota Clean Land, Water, and Culture Legacy Amendment? So the Legacy Amendment, I think, was voted into law in 2010. It's a percent, like less than 1% of an addition to the state sales tax. It generates $335 million a year across 4 funds that are focused on public money that supports arts and culture, outdoor heritage, clean land and water conservation, and fish and wildlife expansion for recreational and hunting opportunities. So $335 million a year across those 4 funds, $3.7 billion since 2010 that's been invested. It's a very negligible sales tax. What was really strategic about it is that the Minnesota Walker Museum of Art in the Twin Cities and every Menards in the state had the same orange banner that said vote yes to the Legacy Amendment, and it was a landslide. It was easily won. Do y'all think there's potential for something like that in Kentucky, and have you heard of it?
This goes back to a little bit of our conversation Friday night when I mentioned how poorly Kentucky has done in terms of the state general fund dollars, which we really don't receive any, but we have programs like the Kentucky Heritage Land Conservation Fund, which is mostly associated with environmental education and natural resource preservation. And I mentioned to you all how important it was that all of our different user groups stick together. So what I like about that model in Minnesota that I would love to see pushed up the chain here in Kentucky is that it is more than just nature or outdoor recreation. It also brings in the arts. And I think we would stand a much better chance if we do something like this push collectively. And we've tried this for conservation numerous times with some small successes, and as I mentioned Friday, we're still way behind states like Georgia and Alabama and Tennessee. All our surrounding states, we're behind in conservation funding. But maybe it would take something like that, which would be a combined approach for arts, culture, nature, etc., to get more of our legislators behind this, whereas they don't see it as such a special interest kind of thing where they won't get enough constituent support.
Right.
If you have 4 or 5 different groups involved, maybe we would have a better shot. Some of that money could go to Heritage Land Fund, some of it to Arts Council, some of it to RUX, or whatever.
Period.
So I love that, and kudos to Minnesota. It's cold up there.
I was gonna ask, because I know you guys have talked about, the balance between, tourism, which is what you guys do, and conservation, which is what you guys do. How do you guys work together whenever you guys are coming up with plans? Do your offices coordinate stuff a lot? What does your all collaboration look like, I guess?
I don't have any
Well, one of the things is and Julie does a great job of this, of maintaining contact with like the state park director, and when they have big weekends of things, activities, when they have planned activities and they're prepared for large crowds and they're recruiting large crowds, like when they're selling campsites and those type things, that's our coordinated effort in that, you know, we want to be in and help them promote the big weekends that they have and the special events that they have, and when they're prepared for large groups on certain weekends and certain times of the year. So it's that open avenue. I don't know if you realize it, but this campsite has been voted the most popular campsite in Kentucky 4 straight years. Yeah, five.
We've won 4, we're up on our 5th.
Yeah. This year will be 5. So that tells you the dedication of the people who come here. They want to return here, but again, I think that's because of the great promotional effort and the facilities that you see here.
I got a question. What was on this land before it was flooded and turned into a man-made lake?
I could answer that. I used to know the number of how many private farms. It was all farmland.
Okay.
So everything that's under the lake was the rich farmers, because his bottomland, fertile soil, that they had more opportunity to grow row crops. Up here on Pikes Ridge, it was the poorer farmer who was kind of more of a subsistence farmer anyway, just because the soil is not as high quality. So they were probably growing small patches of tobacco and had a handful of cows, depending on how many acres they had, things like that. So it was all farmland. When I first started down here 30 years ago, I'd be stopping in the store and a young man, my age even back then, or 20 years old, yeah, you're the people who stole all my property. Well, it was his great-grandfather's property, and then you don't hear that anymore. That's kind of went by the wayside. You don't get those complaints like you used to. But yeah, there was a lot of hard feelings because this was eminent domain property, basically.
Oh, wow.
I saw Ray had a question.
I was curious about the founding of the lake system, and if that was in Kentucky or if that was national, and what was the vision around, like, was it for recreation or energy dams, and then also, like, how does that affect the stream systems ecologically?
I'm going to share this with Josh because he is the Corps rep, and these lakes in Kentucky, most of the lakes, the vast majority are Corps managed lakes, not all of them, but the vast majority are. And from a river ecology historical perspective, and what we still deal with today in trying to improve the management of our rivers that gave birth to these lakes, if you will, is that initially the vast majority of the lakes and their management was designed around the component of flood control. And particularly flood control, many people think that, say, Green River Lake is here to prevent flooding on the Green River. Talk to the Corps managers and the engineers, and they'll tell you while that does have an effect and does reduce flooding on the Green River, the majority of the dams on the Green River Basin, the flood control they're really trying to get is that further downstream. The lower Green River, the Ohio, and even the Mississippi rivers, which over time, of course, have experienced catastrophic flooding with damage to bottomland crops, to cities, etc. So it's an effort, a collective effort, to manage all of these not as independent projects, but together to achieve a larger type of flood control. But now what some of those engineers who are now retired would now tell you, what are we now, 55 years or so later, is that in terms of the impact of these projects, recreation is now way up here relative to the benefits, even the monetary benefits from flood protection. Josh,
For any of you that have actually been out in Green River Lake, if you were to look over at the fishing pier, you'll see we're currently in a little bit of a flood stage. A lot of people like to come out here and visit Green River Lake for different forms of recreation. We've seen a lot of people out here with their boats today. You hear a lot of people that come and ask me, when are you going to draw the lake down? Why is the lake up? When are we going to be at summer pool? You get a lot of questions about what are you going to do to help me come out and recreate at the lake. So, we get to answer a lot of questions. A lot of people ask, why was the lake put here? Our mission was obviously for flood control and in further reaches of Green River and into the Ohio and Mississippi. Navigation is something that the Corps of Engineers is really large into. Make sure that the waterways are navigable for commodities, ships, and different trading and things up and down the river. So I tell people almost on a weekly basis how big of an impact the Corps of Engineers dam here at Green River has across a big portion of the United States. Most every drop of water that runs through Green River Lake, down Green River, ends up in the Gulf of Mexico. So the Corps of Engineers manages how the water gets down there, what rate it gets there, and how we can use that water. So trying to balance our flood control mission with the recreation that people still want to do. We do have times where people will call in and say, hey, can you change the river CFS so that we can kayak this weekend? Or, believe it or not, there are times which Memorial Day weekend is coming up.
Oh, yeah.
The lake is still flooded a little bit, and 4,900 cubic feet per second is a lot of water on Green River.
Yep.
And we're trying to get the lake back down to summer pool before Memorial Day weekend so that the people that are coming out here can recreate safely.
Yeah.
We don't want the water to be up too high and impact. So Pikes Ridge Campground has been halfway underwater for the past couple of weeks. Times of big rains, we'll have logs and trees floating out of the water everywhere. So, we try to manage all of this so that people can come out and recreate safely.
So I work in kind of a tourism adjacent field, and I know there's that sweet spot of not too much tourism where it's exploitative almost and bad for the community, but there's also you want tourism, right, to bring visitors in. And some really interesting panels that I've sat in on and conversations I've been a part of have been talking about short-term rentals. And so I'm just, and I know I'm from Eastern Kentucky and there's already a housing shortage there. And so it's it's this really hard thing to navigate, and I love thinking and asking about places with really strong tourism commissions. Are you all seeing any sort of issues with too many short-term rentals? I know you have hotels and campgrounds and things of that nature. But since your tourism is so strong, right, I'm wondering if you are worried about or seeing any of or preparing for the influx of short-term rentals that may be coming along.
We currently have over 60 bed and breakfast Airbnbs in Taylor County. Over 70 sites and two hotels that will probably be in operation within the next year. So, and they stay very active throughout the year. And it's not just the lake that brings people in. As far as our tourism industry, Campbellsville University brings in a tremendous number of people every year for the activities that they have on campus. But we have other events as well, like I said, 4th of July, and there's so many other things going on in our community. We're on the Civil War Trail with Tibbs Bend Battlefield. That generates a lot of traffic, and some of our other attractions too. So, and again, our location. We have a lot of people because it's cheaper to stay here and drive to some of these other places where the lodging is much higher. And so that's the type of traffic that we see. So it's more than just Green River Lake from our tourism standpoint. As far as reaching capacity, right now, we have more bed and breakfasts that are, we're averaging probably 3 or 4 a month of people that are opening new facility.
Are they paying their transient taxes?
Yes.
They are?
Yes.
Okay.
Lucky you.
That they're not.
Yeah, that's one of the things that, again, that's Julie does a great job of that, of monitoring and we enforce the transient tax issue. Sometimes you have to be an enforcer, and so we get support from our county attorney And yes, so we do enforce the transient tax, and we make sure that we collect the taxes that are due, because it's unfair to those, you know, who actually pay it. And, you know, we're promoting all of these facilities and all of these places. You'll find all of our bed and breakfast and lodging locations are on our website. So they get free promotion through their transient tax, but yes, we do enforce strictly, or try to.
And I think one of the biggest things about collecting transient tax, especially from people that own short-term rentals like Airbnbs, is the misconception that they think I am taxing them and their income. And I have to remind them, some of them, it's been years of reminding, that we are taxing your guest. Your guest pays this tax, you collect it just like you would if you had a retail business and collected sales tax. Some people understand that and they can get it, some don't. It's been a constant headache. But we also do, every time we get a new lodging facility, we make sure it's on their website. I make sure it's on the Department of Tourism website. I'm letting them know what we do with this transient tax money, that they're getting something out of it, even though it's not coming out of their pocket. So I think a lot of it is just educating and just keep repeating the same message over and over again. And I know it's been a disaster with Airbnb, where Vrbo, Priceline, Booking.com, Expedia, they're all collecting this local transient tax. Airbnb is the only one that I'm aware of that has bucked the system and said we're not doing it, which there is a lawsuit going on and we're waiting for the judge to rule on that. But so that's caused miscommunication too, but I think it's like everything else, whether we're working on a project and need the Corps' information or anything else, it's educating people, it's giving them resources to go to. I'm constantly sending links from Airbnb's air site to these property owners, telling them this is how it works, this is what it's doing. So it's just, it is a headache, but it's just one of those constant battles, but the only way you're gonna win it is through educating people.
Unfortunately, you're dealing a lot of times with people who have never operated a business also. Yeah, they have an extra farmhouse or they have an extra piece of property that used to be a rental property, and so it's their first venture into business, and they're not familiar with taxes and that type of stuff. So again, it's an education thing.
What's our time situation?
We're right exactly on time, so we can maybe take one more question and wrap it up.
So, you guys have a housing shortage here?
Yes, we're like every community in Kentucky. We have a housing shortage. Affordable housing is an issue everywhere that you talk to. Economic development people and also chambers, we all are facing the same situation. It's affordable housing.
Quick piggyback on the transit tax thing, which you've educated me because I didn't know about that issue. But does that also apply to, say, private campgrounds where I get concerned because sometimes I see it looks like residency to me in some of the communities, not just Taylor County, I'm talking about the surrounding area, and I wondered how is that supposed to be managed or
It
handled?
depends if a particular county has enacted a tourism entity. By statute, we are a taxing district by statute. And yes, the Kentucky legislature opened campgrounds in 2023, January. So that was new as of January, where we were collecting a 3% tax on all sales of campgrounds.
Okay.
So previously it was just beds.
There is a provision though, anybody that stays over 30 days, anytime you rent a room in Kentucky, you pay a 6% sales tax and a 1% transient tax that goes to the state. That does not include the local transient tax. But anybody that stays over 30 days, that those taxes fall off. So if it is a long-term rental, like a camp, we have several RV parks here that are seasonal, but the people stay more than 30 days, we do not collect a tax from them.
Thank you again so much.